Welcome back, everyone. This is the Custom Built and Screwed podcast. My name is Eric, and if you're interested in learning about what is currently influencing housing affordability, construction costs, or delayed timelines, then you are in the right place. And hey, I reserve the right to talk about other issues or topics going on in Canada or around the world that I find interesting or annoying. This week, we are going to talk about the District of North Vancouver's ridiculous stormwater bylaw management situation. We'll do a brief follow-up on Vancouver's mass prezoning that took place last week. We'll also touch on what municipalities are doing to deal with fees and their finance updates. We'll also touch on the lumber wildcard going on in the world in terms of just tariffs and that sort of thing. And of course, we will finish it up with my ongoing coverage of the North Shore Wastewater Treatment Plant boondoggle. Let's dive in. The DNV stormwater situation is front of mind for me right now because we have a project that is going through the permitting process that is caught up in the stormwater absolute craziness. In this particular case, we had to kind of set the scene. The property in question, shall we say, is slope side and stream side. So two fairly challenging DPAs right off the bat, admittedly. But nonetheless, because of the stormwater bylaw management change on this project, we have had to hire a geotechnical engineer, an environmental consultant to consult on how any sort of stormwater management might affect the stream and or the bank. We've had to bring in an arborist to talk about the trees that are there. Amongst all of the, though they shouldn't be typical, what have become, more than usually typical, like structural engineers and that sort of thing with respect to the actual construction of the house. So, we paid our clients, of course, paid these professionals and us to manage those professionals to figure out, what we're going to do with the additional stormwater that it needs to be dealt with as it arrives on the property from the sky. Our first option was to create a gravel pit in the client's backyard, which is at the top of the bank. The geotechnical experts that we hired, engineers, felt like whatever they did there was going to be very safe. No concern about any sort of slope stability or anything like that based off of what's already going on the property. I will start this story a little bit with the fact that I haven't done the math for the podcast today, to be totally fair and honest. I'm planning on doing that for a potential presentation that I will prepare for mayor and council at a future council meeting. But like if I said we were adding 100 extra square feet of roof space to a home that has an overall current roof footprint of, let's call it 2,000 square feet, that would be a stretch. I don't think it's as much as 100 extra square feet, but maybe it is. Not a lot. So because that we're adding any additional square footage to the home and the way that the bylaw is written. Now, I want to be really, really clear in this podcast, okay? I am not pointing the finger or assigning any blame or shame to any person that is on staff at any municipality. I acknowledge and fully appreciate and understand that the people that are on staff are simply doing their jobs based off of the way that they understand the bylaws to be written and what the bylaws kind of sort of mean for them to do. It is fair to say that they're just doing their jobs. The way that the bylaws have been written and the way that things are being treated is just ridiculous. All right. And For the love of everything holy, Mayor and Council of the District of North Vancouver, again, not naming names or anything like that, although I guess I kind of am by saying mayor because there's only one mayor in the District of North Van, we need to address this stormwater issue urgently, right? It's already costing people like myself when I built the home I'm sitting in right now, a basement. And then in my front yard, I have $50,000 worth of stormwater detention. 50 grand. It's underground. Nobody will ever see it. Adds no value to the property. That's 100 grand before taxes. $100,000 earned income for a detention tank in my front yard. All right, so let's get off Eric's high horse a little bit and let's talk about what's broken with respect to the bylaw. So first and foremost, we have ambiguous targets. The bylaw mixes retention, detention, and controlled release without a clear hierarchy. All right. Designers are being forced to guess which target governs for each lot type. The next issue is that there's a threshold whiplash. So trigger points like lot size, percent of impervious ground versus slope versus proximity to creeks interact in ways with each other that really trip things up, especially with small it basically makes small infill projects or like a small renovation like I'm talking about doing go through the same hoops to jump through as major commercial sites, apartment buildings, for a single family home renovation, not even a new build, like dealing with the same sort of experts and professionals. Like, is that sounding ridiculous enough to you yet? Because if it isn't, it should be. All right. The next thing is that there's one size infiltration assumption. So there's no way for anybody to reasonably predict what the infiltration rate of their soil means. And so what you might be asking yourself, like, what the hell does infiltration rate mean, Eric? Well, what that is extremely not scientific, but I guess it's scientific enough that people work with it. You basically have a hole dug into the solid bearing ground, and you take a pipe that's X number of inches tall, X number of inches wide, and you fill it with water. And the amount of time it takes for that pipe to drain down indicates how porous or how much infiltration those soils have for any groundwater disbursement. All right. So the District of North Van, I have dug a lot of holes in the District of North Van and across the Lower Mainland, frankly. Like, the same jurisdiction can have multiple different types of soils underneath the surface, right? You can have nice, beautiful, clear, free draining glacial till, excavation people might call it 6-inch minus, sandy, beautiful, free draining, wonderful, glorious material. Other times you come up against gray clay. We kind of call it goose when we're working on the tools because it literally sticks to the bottom of your boots like goose poop. So yeah, there's that. And there's, a whole gambit in between of different sort of situations. And so these different soils are differently porous and infiltrate at different rates. And so we don't have any clear guidance on how to deal with this stuff. The next thing that obviously I've just touched base on, but it's going through my notes and over here is we're now having to significantly over-engineer things for, relatively small jobs, preparing full hydro models, design reports, long-form maintenance covenants, and as-built are required for a simple addition or carriage house. We're talking massive amounts of soft costs here. The next thing that comes into play that is problematic with this is all of this infrastructure that property owners are having to pay for on their own property now become theirs to also have to maintain on a go-forward basis. what are the real world impacts here? That, I kind of touched on some of the things that I've had to deal with personally. Well, with this client and with countless other projects on the North Shore that I am very familiar with other contractors that I'm friends with, we have massive amounts of permit stalls, right? Like permits move through the district and of North Van specifically fairly well until they hit the engineering department, and at the engineering department, that's where they go to die. Again, I don't think that it's anything to do with the people that are working there or the number of people that are working there. I think it has to do with the complexity of the problem and the fact that the district in North Vancouver is trying to offload responsibility for groundwater to the homeowner instead of dealing with it themselves and installing and maintaining their own infrastructure to allow property owners to do whatever the hell they want on their property, right? Like, why the hell are property owners paying property taxes if the district is not going to be doing things to make sure that they can do what they need to on the property, right? So, I would suggest that this stormwater situation adds a minimum of 2 months to the permitting process. I know I've seen it add an additional 8 months to the permitting process. And so, my question is, what's the smallest project you've worked on or been a part of where you've had to jump through all of these hoops? I'd love to know. So, please comment below and let me know what you've come up against in the past that has been problematic for you. Part of the problem is if we're going from the infiltration system side of things that doesn't work, then we have to go to a detention system, which costs a whole bunch more and becomes even more problematic and more challenging to deal with, right? So, I think we need to go back to what was, because I personally, I know there's the environmental people that are saying, oh, well, this bylaw is there to help save the fish and whatever else. Well, if saving the fish is the issue because there's too much groundwater getting put into the stormwater system, which then gets diverted into the creeks, District of North Van, come up with your own cistern system, right? Create your own small mini pools or cistern systems or whatever the hell you need to do in order to reduce how much water and how quickly it goes into the creeks. Why in the F are you putting this responsibility and onus on the property owner? It is ridiculous. What the hell are people paying their property taxes for? Fix your own stuff, get your own infrastructure in place, and sort it out. Enough already, right? Like, we can't keep on going like this. The cost of homes, the cost of housing, the cost of construction is so far above and beyond what it has been in years past. And it's little changes like this, like I talked about it in a previous podcast where the district in North Van decided to change their waste management bylaw so that, now we have to get mid-demolition inspections and these sorts of things. All of these little things, although maybe it's just a little something here, and that's what one of the staff people said, oh, well, it's not going to take a lot of extra work. It doesn't matter if it's going to take a lot or a little of extra work. Any extra work is too freaking much. It means that there's more hours for staff to have to do things that realistically aren't adding a ton of value in terms of saving the environment and protecting the ecosystems in which we live. Right? Because here's the thing. If you have people doing this on their own properties, after the fact, people can bypass these systems and just ignore them altogether anyways. It's idiotic. It's just dumb. If we're worried about the streams, then let's protect the streams. The district should be protecting the streams, not the property owners. It just makes sense. Right? Am I crazy? I feel like I'm crazy. I don't think I am. But that's what it feels like. This single issue is one of the most contentious, problematic issues facing the district in North Van currently. The stormwater bylaw needs to get changed back to once it was, whatever it was, 2022, 2023, whenever they made that change. That change is screwing things up so tremendously badly. I beg, beg, please listen. It's not working. So change it. Get a little fired up about there. So for council, questions for you. So questions to ask yourself and questions to ask staff, right? What percentage of small building permit applications are cleared through on the first review under this new bylaw? How often are permit applications going straight through? Let me ask the same question a different way. How often are engineered proposals from geotechnical engineers being accepted on the first go round by the engineering department at the District of North Vancouver? I think that's an interesting question to ask, and I hope you do ask it. What about instead of having every homeowner have to, if we're gonna like put the onus on the homeowner to, do their own detention tanks, instead of having to hire a geotechnical engineer, how about the district just say, okay, if you, for every square foot of roof that you have, or driveway, for every square foot of impenetrable surface that you have on your property, you need to have a holding tank, a detention tank that is capable of detaining X number of gallons of water. You figure out what that needs to be. Don't put the onus on somebody else to figure out what that needs to be in terms of like heavy rain events and that sort of thing. Figure it out for yourselves. What does that number need to be, right? It seems like it should be pretty easy to come up with like impermeable surface, gallons of water that are able to be detained on the property. I still don't think that that's the right way to go. I think the district should be the one dealing with that on their own property and their own systems, maintaining it themselves. Why the hell else are we paying property taxes? But at least if we have that as the system, life is good. Life is good, right? Life is good. Another question that we could go back and ask staff is what data is showing in terms of like the net runoff reduction that has happened since we put this bylaw into place? How much water is now not going into streams or going more slowly into streams? Like, is this bylaw change making positive changes to our stream system and our ecology? I don't actually have the answer to that question. I just think it's an interesting question to ask. So let's ask it. I think that's about enough about the stormwater management system. You can tell that I am pretty fired up about this topic because I think it is so freaking asinine. It may not be the most poorly written bylaw and the most horrifically awful change that the district has made to their bylaws in the last 10 years. But if it's not, I don't know what is. All right, let's move on to the Vancouver mass prezoning situation. So we talked about this a little bit last week. So you recall that zones for R3 and R405 would be pre-zoned for development. And instead of having to go and get go in for rezoning, the city of Vancouver has agreed to pre-zone these areas. So now instead of having, historically you had to do like a rezoning application and then you would do a development permit application. So the city of Vancouver is trying to streamline things, which I applaud. To be honest, I applaud that they're trying to streamline things and just pre-zoning these things. So then now all you have to do is get a development permit. Again, we talked about this last week, but I think it's just recap. A development permit doesn't summon a transformer from BC Hydro, right? BC Hydro lead times and any sort of upgrades that need to happen, they're not part of the permitting process, but they take as long or longer most of the time. So we need to figure out a way to collaborate and coordinate with BC Hydro on these additional hydro needs. All right. Utilities, right? Like we talk about sewer, stormwater, like those aren't really talked about or thought about throughout this process at all. And again, we really need to worry about what sort of bottlenecks we might find under the ground in terms of pipe infrastructure and the ability to move stuff around. That stuff being stuff that comes from within us or stuff that falls from the sky. Either way, there are pipes in the ground that move those materials around. And I dare say that I am guessing that none of that infrastructure is going to be significant nor sufficient to deal with the additional load that is going to be placed on it by this increased density. So we really do need to make sure that our municipalities, as we increase density, we are making sure that we are increasing infrastructure, because I have not had to deal with it on a firsthand basis myself, but I have been in homes after the fact where there have been sewer backups and sewer floods. And I can tell you it is a wildly unpleasant experience. And I don't think there's a lot more to talk about on the mass prezoning other than, again, I think it's great that we have a little bit of action moving towards being more efficient with the permitting process and getting things through. Again, I think it's really important that we're talking about and we're thinking about the municipal infrastructure that also needs to happen. And again, I would love to see some sort of formal guidelines that address, hospital beds per capita, swimming lanes per capita, baseball diamonds per capita, gymnasiums per capita, ice rinks per capita, grass fields per capita, artificial turf per capita, outdoor parks for kids to play in per capita. Like, I think we need to have some sort of ranges that municipalities and provinces need to absolutely make sure are in place so that the people living in those areas are not having their way of life decimated due to density increases. That's my opinion anyways. You can disagree with me. It's fine. I'm not going to cry. I'd love to hear, if you do disagree with me, what your thoughts are and what you think the solution should be in the comments below. Please lay it on me. I'd love to hear from you. All right. So moving on to just general commentary on municipalities, honestly, across the country. All right. I've talked a lot about the fees that developers are being charged and forced to pay for creating homes for us. And, I think it was pretty easy for everybody, citizen and bureaucrat and elected official alike, to want to get in on the bandwagon of, the house prices in Canada just spiraling up and up and up and up with no ceiling in sight. Well, very clearly in the last year or so, we have found a ceiling. Probably temporary ceiling, but we found a ceiling for the moment. And now that we found that ceiling, we're finding that all of these developers are unable to pencil their projects and make the math make sense. These development fees are killing people. Well, not like literally, figuratively, financially, not, yeah. Okay. Financially. But, so we've got a lot of calls for change on the DCC thing. So we've got ACCs being proposed. So there's ACCs that are now being used to standardized amenity asks. Don't seem to make them smaller. And, you've got your DCCs plus utilities, DCL, which I was like, what the hell does DCL stand for? So let's look at all the acronyms of where developers start to panic and start sweating profusely in public, shall we say. So there's DCLs, which is a development cost levy. There's DCCs, which are development cost charges. ACCs, amenity cost charges, and CACs, which are community amenity contributions. These are all of the hidden taxes that our municipalities and provinces have been getting drunk off of for the last 10 years. And so spending at our municipal and provincial levels are way the hell out of control because they've gotten used to being able to just have all of this money flow in from developers for all of the development that's happening, right? Well, we all now know that developers aren't developing right now, right? If they can't make money, they're not going to do the work. And so, across the Lower Mainland, there's far more projects being canceled than there are projects being proposed. That's a problem. That's a big problem. I would say, what they're trying to do, I do approve and I agree with. Like, they're trying to say, okay, like, let's get to one number. I think, again, maybe I'm naive. Well, I am, for sure I am. My wife would say I'm naive and I'm too trusting. But I would say, right, that we have this issue where our local and provincial governments especially have gotten too used to this massive amount of income coming in from ACCs, DCCs, and CACs, and now soon to be DCLs, which is going to be for these like pre-zoned things and, the 4-plex and 6-plex pre-approvals that the province of BC has come up with recently. We have all of these things happening and it is like just costing so much money. I would love to see a world in which we just have a singular cost that is being, I don't know if it's a percentage. I don't know what the solution is on it, but my ponderance for you, dear viewer, is why are developers having to pay anything at all? They're creating additional addresses in the municipality in which they're building. So those additional addresses will now be paying property taxes in perpetuity. I'm not saying that I'm like violently opposed to developers having to pay a little bit of something to improve infrastructure, this, that, or the other thing. But in the same breath, like, why are the developers paying that? And why aren't the stratas and or the individual homeowners of those areas paying that stuff, right? Like, I mean, developers are going to, they're in business to make money and they're going to make as much money as they can. And I fully get that. Like, we can't really legislate or do anything about that. But you know what? They take a ton of risk, more than people realize. And there's a lot of developers going bankrupt right now. A lot. Like, sure, 2012 to 2022, they made some money. But are they printing money now? Oh no. And the developers that I talk to, they don't seem stressless, shall we say. So I think it's something that I want us to continue the conversation about and really think, how and where do we want the money to come from? Because in my mind, right, if mayor and council are having to spend money from the general taxpayer, they're going to be held far more to account for those expenditures than when taxpayers feel like the money is just coming from the developer. Oh, the developer is going to pay for it. Developer is going to pay for that, whatever the case may be, right? I think that if mayor and council can only spend money that they're collecting from the end user taxpayer, I feel like a more conscientious spending schema would be likely. That's what I think. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. All right. So the lumber wildcard, and we talked about this a couple of times. So we have got our good friend Donald down south putting massive tariffs on our softwood lumber. And I did a big bit on this in I think the last episode, maybe the episode before that. So I'm not going to go back and recover all of those or restate all of those points, other than the fact of the matter is that, for you as a homeowner or you as a contractor, you're really going to want to make sure that as much as you possibly can, you get your lumber costs and that sort of thing pre-priced out before your project starts, because there's just so much possibility for change. And I mean, I guess the only thing that, I always think about is, like everybody wants to save money when they get to save money, but nobody ever wants to spend more. And so there has to be some sort of balance there, I think, right? Where it's like, well, if, the contractor is taking on some risk on lumber prices, then, should lumber prices come down, well, then they should get to reap those rewards. Conversely, if lumber prices go up, then it's like, well, now you got to eat it. So, I think as long as everything is balanced and, how people are being treated and how contracts are being dealt with is reasonable and fair to everybody involved, is what it is. But I guess this is my confused way of saying, be wary of the lumber costs. Tariffs in the United States don't directly impact the cost of materials in Canada, but they can indirectly impact the cost of materials in Canada. So just be forewarned that there is possibly some oscillation in prices ahead. And we'll see what happens. Hopefully nothing, but it's just something to be thinking about and be concerned about, because it could affect us. Hopefully not, but it could. All right. And so as I try to do in all of my podcast, and I will continue to do it until a formal inquiry is launched, or maybe once we got the results of the formal inquiry too, to be honest. I want to finish today's podcast talking about the North Vancouver North Shore wastewater treatment plant boondoggle, right? So again, just brief update. PCL is building it. Program is currently sitting around $3.9 billion. Independent review has been paused pending litigation, which I think is horse malarkey, and it should be moving forward before any sort of litigation, because that litigation isn't coming to pass for another couple of years. That's too long. People need to lose their jobs today. We need this review done ASAP. This is people covering their butts. That's what this is. We need that independent review as soon as humanly possible. And I do want to shout out to Councillor Catherine Pope for trying to put something forward at the UBCM meeting, whatever it was, 2 or 3 weeks ago, that got somehow voted down. I don't understand what these people are doing. I don't know how we just blindly accept a $2 billion cost increase. Like, we're talking a 200% cost increase. 900 million to 3 point. Is that a 300% cost increase? Maybe it's a 300% cost increase. Do your math, Eric. It's a big increase. Of course, we're still hoping to have substantial completion by 2030, give or take. And we've got, of course, North Shore households having steep sewer bill increases to pay for this massive cost overrun. So where my asks on this to, I guess it's to Metro Vancouver, is there any court docket movement? Did or has any municipality adjusted sewer levies in their budget talks as of yet? And is Metro posting monthly construction updates? Like, are they going to start posting updates in terms of, like, how the project is progressing, so citizens can see where their money is going, how it's being spent, and the progress that's being made at the treatment plant, the $4 billion treatment plant. Mental. Well, you've made it this far. Thank you so much. I'm Eric Jensen. I am the owner of Sprucehill Homes. I come here to kind of vent, talk about what's going on, hopefully educate you a little bit, to let I've created this podcast to inform and educate homeowners, staff, city staff, councilors, mayors, and just really shine a light on the impracticality of some of the bylaws and some of the changes that are being made and how they are adversely affecting the people living in their communities. I am obviously really passionate about what I do in terms of the construction that we do, and also about really advocating for my fellow citizens and making sure that we all get treated fairly by City Hall. I think it is so important. And I also hate it when our taxpayer money is wasted. I hate it when any money is wasted. But God, do I hate it when our tax dollars get wasted. It is just, it's challenging to watch. If you enjoy this content, I sure would appreciate it if you like the video and subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell icon if you want to get further updates. And in the meantime, as I always say, thanks for watching, stay awesome, and catch you on the next one. Bye now.